Welcome, everyone, to Rutgers at the Voice of College Football. Hope you're all having a wonderful holiday season. I hope that, some of you may not be after the college football playoffs. But today we're going to be talking about, will Rutgers improve next year? And we're going to be discussing several topics. If you like the show, please hit that like and subscribe button. And we're welcoming all callers tonight to hear your comments about Rutgers football and college football generally. So the topic for tonight, will Rutgers football improve? Well, Rutgers ends the season, the 2024 season, 7-6, 4-5 in the Big Ten, with a devastating 44-41 loss to Kansas State. Had the lead for much of the game, collapsed in the second half against a good but not great Kansas State team. So let's review the season when trying to answer this question if Rutgers will improve. Well, we had the loss to Kansas State 44-41 to finish 7-6. What did Coach Greg Schiano say in the press conference after the Kansas State game? He said he was disappointed in the result but not discouraged. He said he had a huge debt of gratitude to the seniors who played in their last game, and he acknowledged the hard work of the players and the administration in persevering through the adversity that they faced this season, namely the injuries, the many injuries that the team suffered. Schiano said, if you do everything you can to be the best you can be at peace with the results. And unfortunately, although he doesn't like the loss, that's the way life goes, Schiano said. He said we did everything we could, and he feels very bad for the players. But he said the players persevered through adversity this season and injuries when other teams would have given up. And he said, unfortunately, you win some and you lose some, and that's life. And then ended by saying we could have won 9 or 10 games if we had stayed moderately healthy. So the tenor of Coach Schiano's press conference, similar to press conferences that he's had throughout the season, highlighting the team's ability to overcome adversity, persevere through challenges, and give their best effort. So Rutgers finishes the season a mediocre 7-6. Will they improve next year? Well, to answer that question, there's three things that have to be addressed. Now, we know that Rutgers historically has not been a great team. We also know that Rutgers, in Greg Schiano's first stint from 2001 to 2011, they turned the football program around and were competitive. They were a very good team at times. Then, of course, we had the Chris Ash era, and don't need to talk about that. Now Schiano's in his second stint, and Rutgers was a bit more competitive this year, but ultimately ended on a sour note with that loss to Kansas State and finishing a mediocre 7-6. So is Rutgers going to improve next year? Well, there's three issues that Rutgers needs to address if Rutgers is going to improve. These three issues are the culture, the coaches, and the commitment. I'm going to start with the culture. So I'm going to begin this by saying that if you look at the University of Alabama, University of Michigan, University of Georgia, Ohio State, at those schools, losing is never an option, and losing is never accepted under any circumstances. If you have ever been on the University of Alabama's campus after a loss, you will see that it is like a funeral for a week. After Ohio State lost 13-10 to Michigan, fans were calling for Ryan Day to be fired. Okay, even though Ohio State was, of course, going to the playoff and otherwise had a successful season and it has a great roster. At some schools, losing one game is not acceptable. And at these schools, these elite schools, a national championship is the standard every single year, and nothing less is acceptable. Is that the culture at Rutgers? No, it's not. And that is a problem. For too long, fans have been willing to accept mediocrity when it comes to Rutgers. If they go 7-5, fans are happy. If they go 8-4, fans are happy. Well, they shouldn't be. The culture at Rutgers is a problem because we're often celebrating seasons that other schools would think were horrible seasons that we think are good seasons. Why is that? because Rutgers does not have a culture like the Alabamas, like the Ohio States, like the Michigans, like the Oregons, like the Texases. That has to change, okay? Rutgers, beginning with the coaches, has to set a standard for the players. Our goal every year is to compete for a national championship, and we're going to do everything we can to get there. Our goal is not to go to the Rate Bowl. Our goal is not to go 7-5 or 8-4 or even 9-3. It is to make the college football playoffs every year and to compete for a national championship. And to that end, every single day in practice, every player will be held to the highest standard. Every player should be pursuing perfection. Every player should be making the choices and decisions every single day that are going to put them in the best position to be successful and to compete at the highest levels. The culture at Rutgers doesn't seem to be anything resembling the culture of the Buckeyes, the Longhorns, the Wolverines, the Crimson Tide, the Bulldogs. And that is a problem, because if Rutgers is ever going to get over the hump and get better, it begins with one thing. It begins with a vision. And the vision has to be, we are going to compete for a national championship every year, and we are going to make the college football playoff every year. That is the standard. You set the standard first. Then you talk about the values that this culture has to embody and encompass to be successful. What are those values? Holding every player to the highest standard, making sure the players are held accountable, okay? Not kissing players' asses, not coddling players, never being happy with a loss, never accepting a loss. That kind of culture is what Rutgers needs if Rutgers is going to be competitive. It does not have that culture right now, and that is problem number one. You know, and some people might say, well, Rutgers has always been mediocre. Your expectations are too high. Well, the only way that a team gets better is if you raise the expectations and you raise the bar. Because when you do that, that's when you attract the kinds of players who share those values, who share that vision, and who are going to want to take Rutgers to the next level. Until the culture changes, no, Rutgers will not improve. Number two, the coaches. Now, I want to be clear when I say this. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Coach Greg Schiano. What he did during his first stint at Rutgers from 2001 to 11 was remarkable. He is a fantastic coach and an even better person. And he has mentored and taught so many football players and helped them to not only have good football careers, but have better lives. He's an excellent coach. He's an excellent mentor. He's an excellent manager. And these kids at Rutgers are better off for having been associated with Coach Schiano. And in his second stint, he has also been very successful. And it's very hard for me to say this, Coach Schiano, but I'm going to tell the truth. I think the way that you are approaching your football program is a problem. In every single press conference, you're talking about how much you admire these kids, how much they've persevered through adversity, how you're disappointed in the result but not discouraged, how you love these kids and how you owe them a debt of gratitude. Well, I think the time for that kind of talk, Coach, is over. You lost the game. It is completely unacceptable. And these players need to be told that it's unacceptable and that you will not accept it. In doing so, you're going to weed out the players who do not share the vision and the values to become national championship contenders. And you're going to attract players that want to play for someone who has a vision to compete with the Ohio States and the Georgias, the Michigans, the Texases. Let's look at a Nick Saban press conference. Nick Saban is mad after his team wins. He's mad after his team blows out another team. You can see him on the sidelines in the fourth quarter yelling at players when they're up by 5 touchdowns and there's 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, I can say the same thing for, and other coaches hold their players to the highest standard at all times and in all contexts. You don't see them in press conferences saying, well, we continue to work to get better. We're disappointed but not discouraged. We overcame a lot of adversity. We would have been 9-3 or 10-2 if there wasn't injury. That may be all true, Coach Schiano. But your approach, number one, is not going to create the culture that I just talked about. And it's not going to push those players to be the best they can be. I hate to say it, Coach, because I love you and I respect you. And I mean no disrespect. But, man to man, I'm going to be honest with you. I think you're coddling these players a bit. And I think you're doing them a disservice, not only in football, but in life. I want to see a press conference where you say, it is totally unacceptable that we lose by 3 to a Kansas State team that we were dominating early on. It is completely unacceptable and will never be acceptable at Rutgers that we give up a 4th and 6 to Illinois at midfield to allow a game-winning score with 8 seconds left. It is completely unacceptable to lose to a bad UCLA team at home 35-32. It is completely unacceptable to come out against Wisconsin, another mediocre team, and get throttled 42-10 in Piscataway. That is not the standard, and it should be made clear. You will not tolerate that. This is not what Rutgers is. This is not your identity. But I don't see you doing that, Coach. I see you in a position where you're trying to, and I understand this. I'm a professor myself at a college. I understand the desire to want to help players, to want to see them develop, to want to inspire them, to want to mentor them. But you are doing them no favors if you are coddling them. Sometimes you have to tell them the difficult truths, not just for the players, but for the program. That's why the coaches are so integral to effectuating the culture. And I say this, like I said, with all due respect, but it's unacceptable. I'm a New Jersey resident. I'm a fan of Rutgers. I didn't go to Rutgers, but I'm a fan of Rutgers football. And I support Rutgers football. And I'm tired of being patient. And when I hear you talk about in press conferences how, we're not going to make excuses for the injuries, but the players are playing really hard. The players have persevered. Well, in life, persevering isn't enough. In life, overcoming adversity is not enough. People expect results. They don't want to see you give up a game-winning touchdown with 8 seconds left to a mediocre Illinois team in Piscataway. Injuries did not cause that loss. A lack of discipline, a lack of execution, a lack of focus is what caused that play and that loss. Injuries didn't cause you to lose 42-10 to a Wisconsin team that was blown out by Alabama in Camp Randall and by all accounts mediocre this year. Injuries weren't the reason you lost 35-32 to a pretty bad UCLA team. So I began by talking about the culture, but my second point is the coaches. And Coach Schiano, I'm talking about you. And like I said, I love you. I think the world of you, but I want to hear you show some fire in your press conferences. I want to see you bench players that aren't doing well. I want to see you pissed off on the sidelines. I want to see you saying in press conferences that the mission, the vision, and the values of this organization are to be in the college football playoff and compete for a national title. And any player who doesn't share those expectations or strive to meet the very high standard that we've established isn't going to play at Rutgers. Until we hear that, I fear, Coach, that your approach philosophically although admirable and certainly beneficial, is going to contribute to a culture where the expectations are lower than they should be and the standards are not as high as they should be. So that's number 2, the coaches. Number 3, the commitment. So we've got the culture, the coaches, and the commitment. What is the commitment of Rutgers University to making this team a college football playoff contender, a national championship contender? We're living in an era of NIL and the transfer portal. Now, I suspect that Congress will enact legislation regulating NIL to a certain degree. Until that happens, are you willing, Rutgers, to dedicate the resources to compete with the Michigans, the Ohio States? Ohio State spent $20 million to get the roster that it has right now, which includes Will Howard, Caleb Downs, okay, Quashawn Judkins, okay? They've got a fantastic roster. Now, it's not enough just to buy players. It's not enough just to throw money at players, whether it's out of high school or from the portal. You still have to have that culture and that coaching that develops those players and that gets them to buy into a standard of excellence and an expectation of perfection. And you have to get everyone to buy into that, or else you can't have any team chemistry. But having said that, you still got to get the players. So is Rutgers committed to getting the players from IMG, from Mater Dei, to paying what they need to pay to get the 5 stars and the 4 stars? Because once you get a couple of 5 stars, once you get a couple of 4 stars, it will have a domino effect. You will start winning, and then other 5 stars and 4 stars will want to come, and then you will be building a true foundation for excellence that comports with the vision to build a national championship caliber team. But that all depends on the commitment of Rutgers and the administration. If the commitment isn't there, if the coaching philosophy remains how it is, and if the culture doesn't change, no, Rutgers will not be better next year. You will see more of the same. And as the schedule gets more difficult, it may get worse. So that's my thoughts on the season for Rutgers. I'm not happy with the season. I understand there were a tremendous amount of injuries. I understand that. But like I said, injuries did not cause you to lose that game to Illinois, to UCLA, to Wisconsin, to Nebraska when you had the ball on the 2-yard line, 1st and goal, and Monangai couldn't get it in, and you had 4 tries at it. Okay? Fundamentals, execution, discipline, focus. That comes when you have a high standard. And I fear that the culture, the coaching, and the commitment is not there. Until it is, the future for Rutgers will look more like this year. And that's going to be the way it will go. So I'd like to challenge Rutgers to make a change. If you really want to be better, then do the things that you need to be better. Let's hope that happens. Other ancillary issues. The defensive line needs to get bigger. We need to get more stout on the defensive line. Okay, that's clear. And second, I know that Ethan Kaliakmanis, he's popular. He's had some very good games. But Ethan, you have to improve. Okay? You have flashes of greatness, but you also have valleys of inconsistency. Okay? Particularly when you are under pressure. If you don't get better, we're not going to win more games. Okay? You've got to improve at reading defenses, getting the ball out quicker, and doing so when under pressure. Because when you're under pressure, that's when I've seen you make the most mistakes. Now, you do have an outstanding arm and a pretty high ceiling. So I support you, and I hope that you do get better, but that's an area of improvement that we need. But it all comes down to culture, coaches, and commitment. So let's look at the 2025 schedule for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Let's go game by game. I see somebody in the comments section, Ignacio, you also have to get fans way more involved with giving more money, and that's going to start with proactive marketing campaigns to reach out to alumni. Ignacio, I agree with you 100%. That's a great comment. All right, we have to get the fans more involved. Rutgers has to be more proactive because one of the good things about NIL is that, ironically, it gives some of the lower-ranked schools a shot at getting some of the top players if they can buy them. Rutgers has to have a robust NIL. If it doesn't, and if its culture and its coaching philosophy stay the same, we're in trouble. Thanks for that comment. All right, so the 2025 schedule. Rutgers starts out in Piscataway against the Ohio Bobcats. The Ohio Bobcats. Not much to say there. Rutgers is going to win the game. They're home for their second game against Miami of Ohio, the Redhawks of Miami of Ohio. That's going to be a win, so we're going to be 2-0 on the season. Ring a bell? Started off 4-0 this season before losing 4 straight, okay, and then ending the season 7-5 and ultimately 7-6 due to the 44-41 loss. I agree with you, Ignacio, about Calic Manis. He's an efficient quarterback. I think we can do better, though. Third game is at home. Norfolk State Spartans. I did not know Norfolk State had a football team. Apparently they do. It won't matter. Rutgers is going to win that game to go to 3-0 on the season. And hopefully by this time, the 3 C's will be actually manifesting. A new culture, better coaching, and a robust commitment. The 3 C's for Rutgers. Now, the fourth game of the season is going to be the bellwether. This is going to be the game that's going to tell you the trajectory of Rutgers for the 2025 season. And that's when the Hawkeyes of Iowa come to Piscataway. And you know what Iowa's going to bring? They're going to bring a great defense. A defense that can shut down the run. A defense that can, with great cornerbacks who can shut down the pass. They're going to be a stingy defense. Iowa traditionally, at best, an efficient offense. Not an offense that's going to score 40 points on you routinely, but an offense that could still score enough points to beat you. Rutgers has to beat Iowa. That is the most important game of the year. You have to establish your street credibility in the Big Ten by beating a legitimate Big Ten team. And Iowa, you will go into Iowa 3-0. Iowa will be at home in Piscataway. I will be at the game. That is the game that you have to win. It's the exact same type of game as the Wisconsin game this year that you lost 42-10 when you were 4-1 after losing 14-7 to Nebraska and Lincoln. You flopped against Wisconsin. You cannot flop against Iowa. That's the game at home that you have to win. And I'm going to say this for the last time so I don't sound like a broken record. How do you beat Iowa? You have the right culture. You have the right coaching philosophy that holds these kids to the highest of standards and demands that they make the right choices and decisions every day to be successful at the highest level. And you have the commitment. That's going to change this program, put it over the hump, and allow us to compete with the Ios of the world. As of now, I'm going to reserve my prediction about what's going to happen with Iowa, but that will be the game that everyone should watch. After Iowa, Rutgers goes on the road to Minnesota, the Golden Gophers of Minnesota. Now, one thing about Rutgers, you have to beat the teams that you should beat. You have to beat the teams in close games. You have to win those 5 or 6 plays that determine the outcome of a game. It's not acceptable to lose by 3 to UCLA or lose on the second last play of the game to Illinois. Completely unacceptable. It's not acceptable to lose 14-7 to the Cornhuskers in Lincoln. If the game is close, it means you can win. And what that requires is winning those inches, winning those 5 or 6 critical plays that turn the game one way or another. And what's going to help you win those inches? The culture, the coaching, and the commitment. Then Rutgers goes out west to Seattle, Washington, against the Washington Huskies. A deceptively difficult place to play. So here's what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say that Rutgers starts out 3-0. I'm gonna predict a loss to the Iowa Hawkeyes at this point, unless the culture, the coaching, and the commitment changes. I'm gonna predict a win against Minnesota. So Rutgers is flying across the country into beautiful Seattle, 4-1. Okay. 4-1. Well, remember when Rutgers was 4-1 and had Wisconsin. Remember when Rutgers had Washington in Piscataway and won 21-18. Rutgers has to win this game. All of these games are games that will tell you if they are going to improve and get over the hump. They have to win these games, and they are there to win. Okay? Let me be very clear what I mean when I say the culture, the coaches, and the commitment. It's called the process. You don't sit there as a football player or as a student or as a doctor or as a lawyer and say, I want to achieve this result. And you don't focus on what result you're going to achieve. You focus on, am I doing the things that I need to do every single day? Making the choices and decisions every single day that are going to make me the best I can be and put me in the best position to be successful. That comes when you have a national championship culture, old school coaches who are going to hold your feet to the fire and not tolerate any bullshit, and a commitment from the university to provide the best support and the best facilities to put their players in a position to win. Well, what's going to happen in Washington? I think they're going to lose. I think it's going to be another loss to the Huskies. So we're 4-2, and guess who's coming to Piscataway next? The Ducks from Eugene, Oregon. I will also be at that game. The Ducks from Eugene, Oregon, currently ranked as the top team in the country. It's going to be a loss. So we got 3 losses. And the trajectory of the season, if you notice, is the exact same as this year. Start off with 3 wins. Then you go to 4-1. Now you're at 4-3. And you're going to go away to Indiana to face the Purdue Boilermakers. That's going to be a win. You're going to go to 5-3. Then you got to go away to face Illinois. And once again, Illinois is one of those teams, like Minnesota, like Washington, like Iowa. Those are the teams you must beat to get over the hump and to establish yourself as a credible contender in the Big Ten. This year, you lost to Wisconsin. You lost to UCLA. You lost to Illinois. You lost to Nebraska. 3 of those 4 games were eminently winnable. Illinois, you were ahead until 8 seconds left in the 4th quarter. UCLA lost by 3. Nebraska by 7. All those games were winnable, despite the injuries. You have to win the close games. But you can't win the close games and win those 5 or 6 plays that determine the outcome of a game unless that culture is the way it should be, the coaching is, and the commitment is there. Okay, I sound like a broken record, but for Christ's sake, How many people in the state of New Jersey are waiting for Rutgers to get over the hump? We're tired of being patient. So Illinois, Fighting Illini. I'm going to give that a win. I'm going to give that a victory. So we have, we are 5-3. I'm sorry, we will be 6-3 at this point with the Maryland Terrapins at home. We're going to beat Maryland. Maryland's one of those sneaky teams, always good enough to beat you, but never good enough to dominate you. I'm going to beat Maryland. So we got 3 losses with 2 games left. Then Rutgers is going to go to the place where I went to law school, Columbus, Ohio, the Ohio State Buckeyes, in the Horseshoe. What's going to happen? They're going to lose because Rutgers has a better culture. Rutgers has better coaching. And I'm sorry, because Ohio State has a better culture. Ohio State has better coaching, and Ohio State's university has a much more robust commitment. Bring us to 4 losses. Then we're home against Penn State. Never been a big fan of Unhappy Valley, primarily because Penn State's offenses have never been good enough to really take them deep into contention for a national title. They'll still be good, likely to be a loss. So we're looking at what? A 7-5 season. And maybe an encore performance in the Rate Bowl. Not good enough. Not good enough. So where does Rutgers need to snatch those wins from the jaws of defeat? Iowa. If you beat Iowa and go to 4-0, forget the record. What that is going to do is that is going to create confidence in your players. That is going to create confidence in your program. That is going to instill some degree of trepidation from other teams who say, this Rutgers team is for real. These New Jersey kids aren't messing around anymore. Okay? Because if you go 7-5, again, what does that mean? It means you're mediocre. Maybe it even means you're good. But like I tell my students every single week, practically, good isn't good enough. And it will never be acceptable at Rutgers. So you got to steal the Iowa game. You got to beat Iowa. Iowa's not going to score 30 points on you. They may score 23, and they may beat you 23-10 or 23-17. You must beat them. You got to take that loss that I've predicted against Washington and beat the Huskies in Seattle. All right? You should be preparing now for these games because the Iowa game is not only going to be the bellwether of the season, it's going to be the catalyst for which way this team goes. So I have it at 7-5. But if the culture changes, the coaching philosophy changes, and the commitment changes, even modestly, we may be able to steal that Iowa game. We may be able to beat the Huskies. But make no mistake, I have us at 7-5. It could easily be 6-6 because we're going to Illinois. And I have that as a win. We're going to Minnesota, which we beat only by a touchdown this year. The Golden Gophers, 26-19. We lost to Illinois. So I'm being a bit generous by giving you those wins, especially because both of them are on the road. So this is a 7-5 season. Could be 6-6. But until the coaching, the culture, the commitment changes, I don't see 8-4 and certainly don't see 9-3. And that's a shame because there's enough talent on this team to make that happen. And the 2024 schedule was the easiest schedule that Rutgers will see. 2025 is a bit tougher. Going forward, it's going to remain very difficult as Rutgers competes in the Big Ten. So, as we end this season, I want to end on a positive note and say, look, Coach Schiano, like I said before, we have a tremendous amount of respect for you. Okay, we do. I think you're a fantastic coach and a fantastic person who's made a difference in the lives of so many young people. And everybody appreciates that. But there needs to be a personality change at Rutgers. There needs to be a culture change. There needs to be, a change in coaching philosophy. There needs to be a change in the commitment. It's not okay to lose 44-41 and say you're grateful to the seniors and you're grateful to how they persevered. Bullshit! They lost. And you will not accept losing with them because the standard is perfection. The standard is we're going to win a national championship or at least compete for it, and losing is never acceptable. I want to hear you say that at the beginning of the 2025 season. Because if you set that precedent and you set that tone, then you're going to find out which players buy in. And then you're going to finally have some team chemistry. And then you're going to set the expectation that informs everything that they do every day. Because it's going to foster player accountability. And, Coach, we hope to have you on the show. I've already sent out an invitation to you. We'd love to hear your thoughts. You're always welcome on the show. There were positives this season, certainly. And you did battle through an unprecedented number of injuries. But at the end of the day, the best coach knows that winning is everything. But the only thing that's more important than winning is the effort to win. The effort to be perfect. If your players put in the effort to be perfect and they lose, well, then they can hold their heads held high. But they didn't do that against Wisconsin. They didn't do that against Illinois. They didn't do that against UCLA when Ethan Garbers is throwing touchdown passes like he's John Elway. So I'm going to end the show by saying what I have repeated about 10 times now. Will Rutgers improve next year? The answer is no, for the reasons I've stated, unless the 3 C's change. 1, the culture has to change. 2, the commitment of the university has to change. And number 3, the coaching philosophy and approach to the players has to change. Hope you all have enjoyed the show. We're going to be coming on every week at 7 p.m. live to discuss everything related to Rutgers football, recruiting, and all developments related to Rutgers football as they happen. We're also going to review the players on the roster and their prospects for next year. And it's going to be a fun offseason. If you enjoyed the show, please hit that like and subscribe button. We look forward to seeing you here next Monday. And if you have any comments, please include them in the comments section. Have a happy New Year and enjoy the quarterfinal round of the college football playoff. Take care.